thought she was forgotten by her husband at the airport, but froze when she read the note in her pocket. Jennifer Baker checked her watch for the 100th time as people rushed past her in the terminal of LaGuardia Airport. 2 hours. 2 long hours waiting for Michael to appear with his usual smile and a creative excuse for being late. But this time was different. Her heart tightened with a strange feeling, as if something were terribly wrong. She tried calling again, but her husband's phone went straight to voicemail. "What's going on, Michael?" she murmured, feeling anger mixed with growing worry. It was when she reached into the pocket of her green jacket for her phone that her fingers brushed against something that made her freeze. A folded piece of paper that definitely hadn't been there when she boarded her flight back from Miami 3 hours earlier. With slightly trembling hands, she unfolded the note. The handwriting was unmistakably Michael's, but the words made her legs go weak. "Jen, forgive me. I can't pretend anymore. Go to your grandmother Margaret's house in Georgetown. Look for the red box in the attic. Only then will you understand why I need to stay away. I love you more than you know, and that's exactly why I can't keep lying. M." Jennifer sank heavily into a nearby chair, rereading the note over and over. Grandmother Margaret's house. But her grandmother had passed 5 years ago, and the house had been closed ever since. What red box? What lies? The noise of the airport seemed distant as her mind raced through the possibilities. Michael had always been a simple man, working at a mechanic's shop in Queens and never showing signs of secrets. They'd met at a 4th of July party 3 years ago and married after a quiet courtship, with no big mysteries. But now, staring at that note, Jennifer realized she might not know her husband as well as she thought. With her heart pounding, she took a cab straight to Georgetown. Grandmother Margaret's house stood on a narrow, steep street, surrounded by other old buildings that resisted the modernization of Los Angeles. The 2-story yellow house had always been her childhood refuge, but now it felt haunted by unanswered questions. The key was where it had always been, under the 3rd fern pot on the porch. Jennifer took a deep breath before stepping inside. The smell of dust and thyme mingled with memories of happy afternoons with her grandmother, who used to make the best cornmeal cake in the neighborhood. Climbing the creaky wooden stairs, she reached the attic, which served as storage. Among furniture draped in sheets and dusty boxes, her eyes searched for something red. It took nearly an hour before she found it, tucked deep in the back behind an old trunk. A small red metal box, about the size of a shoebox, with a tiny padlock. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us newcomers. Now back to the story. Jennifer shook the box and heard the rustle of papers inside. She went downstairs to her grandmother's kitchen, where there was always a set of old keys in a drawer. After trying several, she finally unlocked it. Inside were photographs, letters, and documents that shattered her world. The first photo showed a young Margaret standing beside a man Jennifer didn't recognize, but there was something familiar about those dark eyes and the crooked smile. On the back, a date, 1978. As she sifted through the contents, she found love letters written by the man to her grandmother. The name in the signature made her choke. Robert Thompson. Thompson. Michael's maiden name was Thompson. With shaking hands, Jennifer searched for more clues. She found a birth certificate dated 1979. The baby's name was Robert Thompson Jr., son of Robert Thompson and Margaret Williams. This can't be true, she whispered to herself. But there was more. A letter written by her grandmother Margaret herself, dated just 2 years ago, explained everything. My dear Jennifer, if you're reading this, the time has come for the truth. Robert, the man you know as Michael, is my son. Yes, my son, whom I gave up for adoption when I was only 18. My parents kicked me out when I got pregnant out of wedlock, and I couldn't raise a child alone. Years later, when you were little and your parents worked long hours, it was Robert who helped me take care of you. He came here often, but you were too young to remember. When he grew up and discovered who I really was, we decided to keep it a secret to protect you. Robert always knew you were special. He loved you since childhood, in a pure and protective way. When you reunited at that 4th of July party, he was torn between the joy of seeing you again and the fear that you might be half-siblings. But you must know the full truth, my granddaughter. Robert Thompson, his father, is not your grandfather. Your real grandfather is another man whom I loved deeply, but who passed away before you were born. Robert is my son, but you share no blood relation. Keep this secret with love. He has always loved you, Jennifer, but he's afraid you won't understand the complexity of this situation." Jennifer let the letter fall and leaned against the kitchen wall, her legs giving way. All this time, Michael had known who she was. He knew they had grown up together, that he had a connection to her family, yet he chose to stay silent. But why run away now? Why leave that mysterious note at the airport? She kept searching the box and found something that made her understand. A recent letter, bearing the letterhead of a medical lab. It was a DNA test requested by Michael 3 months ago, comparing his genetic material to hers. The result was clear. They were not related. But then why? She began to murmur when the house phone rang. She answered, her heart racing. "Jennifer?" It was the trembling voice of Mrs. Dorothy, her grandmother Margaret's neighbor for over 40 years. "Dear, I'm so glad you picked up. I saw movement in the house. Is everything all right?" "Mrs. Dorothy, it's me, Jennifer. I'm here sorting through Grandma's things." "Oh, what a relief. Listen, sweetheart. A young man came by this morning asking for you. Said he was your husband. He seemed very nervous. Asking for me. He wanted to know if I had any idea when you'd come here. Said it was urgent, that he'd left something for you to find. He seemed desperate, dear." Jennifer's stomach twisted. Michael knew she'd come here. He had planned it all. "Mrs. Dorothy, could you come over? I need to talk to someone about my grandmother. There are things I don't understand." 15 minutes later, the kind-faced, grey-haired woman was seated at the old kitchen table, pouring coffee she'd brought from home. "Your grandmother was a very special woman, Jennifer, but she carried heavy secrets." "Did you know about Robert? That he was her son?" Mrs. Dorothy sighed deeply. "Yes, I knew. Margaret told me years ago when she fell ill. She was afraid of leaving without setting things right." "But why all the secrecy? Why didn't they tell me the truth?" "Because your grandmother was afraid of how you'd react. So was Robert. They thought it was best to leave things as they were. You both happy and uncomplicated." Jennifer showed the DNA test to Mrs. Dorothy. "But they're not blood relatives. Why did Michael run if there's no problem?" The neighbor's expression shifted. "Oh dear, there's something you still don't know. The problem isn't about blood. It's something much more complicated." "What do you mean, Mrs.?" Dorothy stood and walked to the window, gazing out at the street. "Margaret made me promise I'd only tell the truth if it was absolutely necessary. I think the time has come." "What truth?" "Robert didn't run away because he's afraid you might be related. He ran because he discovered something about the man who killed your father." Jennifer felt her blood run cold. "What man? My father died in a car accident." "No, my dear. Your father was murdered, and Robert found out who did it." The silence in the kitchen was deafening. Jennifer stared at Mrs. Dorothy as if she were speaking another language. "That's impossible. My mother always told me it was an accident. I was only 5, but I remember her crying, the police, the funeral. Your mother lied to protect you. Your father, John Carter, was investigating a corruption scheme at the company where he worked. Someone wanted to silence him." "But what company?" "He worked at a small construction firm." Mrs. Dorothy sat back down. "It wasn't small, Jennifer. It was one of the biggest in Los Angeles at the time, and the man who ordered his death is still alive." "How did Michael find this out?" "Robert always suspected something was off about the story. When you got married, he started investigating on his own. He wanted to give you closure, to prove your father was an honest man who died standing up for what was right." Jennifer's head spun. "But why run? Why not tell me?" "Because the man he discovered is powerful, very powerful, and his influence reaches everywhere in the city. Robert is afraid that if he speaks up, you'll both be in danger." Jennifer stood abruptly. "I need to find him. Where is he?" "I don't know, my dear, but I know someone who can help you." Mrs. Dorothy pulled a small notebook from her purse and wrote down an address. "Go talk to Mr. Walter in Astoria. He was your father's best friend and might have answers even I don't." With the paper in hand, Jennifer thanked her and rushed out to hail another cab. The address led to a small auto repair shop on a busy street in Astoria. Walter Campbell was a man in his 70s, with calloused hands and eyes that carried the weight of many stories. When Jennifer introduced herself as John Carter's daughter, he closed the shop immediately. "Child, you should have stayed away from all this," he said, handing her a glass of water. "Your father made me promise that if anything happened to him, I'd protect you. Mr. Walter, I need to know the truth. My husband found something and now he's running. I can't live with so many lies." The mechanic sighed and walked to an old cabinet, pulling out a yellowed folder. "John gave me this a week before he passed. Said if anything happened to him, I should give it to you when you were grown." Inside the folder were photographs, documents, and a letter written by Jennifer's father himself. "My dearest daughter, if you're reading this, it means I couldn't finish what I started. I discovered the construction company I worked for was involved in corruption, money laundering, and even worse things. The owner, Anthony Mitchell, is a dangerous man who wouldn't hesitate to eliminate any threat. I have proof of everything, and was about to take it to the police when I realized I was being followed. If something happens to me, I want you to know I always loved you, and that everything I did was to secure a better future for you and your mother. The evidence is hidden in a safe place. Walter knows where. Use it wisely, but only if necessary. Sometimes it's better to let the past stay buried. With all my love, your father, John Carter." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. Jennifer looked at Walter with tear-filled eyes. "Where's the evidence?" "In a safe deposit box at the bank. Your father gave me the key, but I can only open it with your authorization." "And this Anthony Mitchell?" Walter's face darkened. "He died of old age last year. But his son, Mark Mitchell, took over the business. He's even worse than his father." "How did Michael find all this out?" "Robert came to see me 3 months ago. Said he was married to you and wanted to know the truth about your father. At first I didn't want to say anything, but he insisted so much that I ended up telling him. I think it was a mistake." Jennifer felt she was losing control of the situation. "I need to find my husband. He could be in danger." He sure could. Mark Mitchell found out someone was investigating his father's death. There are people looking for Robert all over town. "How do you know that?" "Because they came here yesterday, asking about him. Men in suits, very polite, but with faces that don't take no for an answer." Fear gripped Jennifer. Michael was in danger because of her family's past, and she had no idea where he might be hiding. "Mr. Walter, do you have any idea where he might have gone?" The old mechanic thought for a moment. "There's a place your father used to go when he needed to think. A simple inn in Woodstock, up in the mountains. Maybe Robert went there." He wrote the address on a piece of paper. "But be careful, girl. If they find out where you are..." "I don't care about the danger. I can't let Michael face this alone." Leaving the garage, Jennifer rented a car and headed for Woodstock. The 2-hour drive gave her time to process everything she had learned. Her husband wasn't just an ordinary mechanic. He was her grandmother's son, had grown up protecting her from afar, and was now risking his life to uncover the truth about her father's death. The inn was on a quiet street, surrounded by mountains and lush greenery. It was simple but cozy. The owner, a kind woman named Rose, confirmed that a young man had arrived that morning, very nervous and asking for a room in the back. He said he was waiting for someone important to arrive, paid up front for 3 days and asked not to be disturbed. "Can I see him? I'm his wife." Rose hesitated. "He said if a young woman came looking for him, I should let him know first. Wait here." 5 minutes later, Jennifer heard hurried footsteps on the stairs. Michael appeared in the inn's lobby, his face full of both relief and worry. "Jen, how did you find me?" She ran into his arms, but then pulled back and slapped his chest. "How could you abandon me at the airport like that? I was desperate." "I'm sorry, love. I had no choice. I found out things that changed everything. I know everything, Michael. I know you're Grandma Margaret's son. I know about my father. I know about Anthony Mitchell." Michael turned pale. "How did you find out?" "I went to Grandma's house, found the red box, Talk to Mrs. Dorothy and Mr. Walter. Now tell me everything, from the beginning." They went up to the room, and Michael began to tell the whole story. "I always knew I had a special connection with you, Jen. When I was a kid, your grandmother would bring me to play with you. You don't remember because you were too little, but I never forgot. Why didn't you ever tell me?" Margaret thought it was better that way. She was afraid of how you'd react, of what our relationship would be like if you knew the truth. Michael sat on the bed, his head in his hands. "When we met again at that party, I panicked. I thought maybe we were really siblings. That's why I did that DNA test. And when you found out we weren't related, I should have been happy, but then I started wondering about other things. Why did your father really die? Why did your mother always get so nervous when someone asked about him?" Jennifer sat beside him. "And that's how you found out about Anthony Mitchell?" "Walter tried to discourage me, but I insisted. He showed me documents his father had left behind, photographs, recordings. Jen, your father was a hero. He tried to do the right thing and paid with his life. But why run now? Why not tell me everything?" Michael stood up and walked to the window. "Because yesterday, when I got home from work, there were two men waiting for me. They asked if I knew you, if I knew anything about John Carter. I said no, but I could tell they didn't believe me." "And you thought running would solve it?" "I thought if I disappeared, they'd leave you alone. I don't want you to suffer the same fate as your father." Jennifer stood and cupped his face in her hands. "Michael, I can't lose you too. I've already lost my father, my grandmother. I can't lose my husband because of secrets from the past. But Jen, you don't understand. Mark Mitchell is dangerous. If he finds out we have the evidence..." "What evidence?" Michael went to his backpack and pulled out a thick envelope. "Walter gave me the key to the safe. I took everything your father had hidden. Photographs, documents, recordings, enough proof to put Mark Mitchell behind bars for a long time. Then let's turn it over to the police. What if some of them are on his payroll? What if the evidence disappears? What if the same thing happens to us that happened to your father?" Jennifer felt the weight of the decision, seeking justice for her father or protecting her and her husband's future. "There's a third option," Michael said. "We can use the evidence as leverage. Let Mark Mitchell know it exists, but that it'll only be made public if something happens to us. That's blackmail. It's survival." They spent the night debating their choices, each arguing a different point. Jennifer wanted justice. Michael wanted safety. By morning, the decision was made for them. Rose knocked on their door, clearly nervous. "Sorry to bother you, but there are men downstairs asking for you. They said they're police, but they don't look like officers." Michael and Jennifer exchanged glances. They'd been found. "Is there a back way out?" Michael asked. "There is, but they've got someone watching. You're surrounded." There was nowhere left to run. Hand in hand, they walked downstairs, ready to face whatever came next. In the inn's lobby, three men in suits waited. The leader, a middle-aged man with an unfriendly face, introduced himself as Mark Mitchell's lawyer. "Mr. Robert Thompson, Mrs. Jennifer, my client would like to have a civilized conversation with you." "About what?" Jennifer asked. "About documents that belong to the Mitchell family, documents stolen many years ago." Michael stepped forward. "We didn't steal anything. Those documents were left by Jennifer's father, who obtained them legally." "Ah yes, John Carter, a disloyal employee who tried to sabotage an honest company. A shame what happened to him." Jennifer felt rage rise inside her. "My father wasn't disloyal. He found out you were stealing and wanted to do the right thing." The man smiled coldly. "Interesting perspective. But let's get to the point. My client is willing to make a deal." "What kind of deal?" Michael asked. "You hand over the documents and we all pretend this conversation never happened. You go back to your normal lives and we go back to ours. And if we refuse..." The man's smile faded. "That would be a very unwise decision." Jennifer looked at Michael and saw he was about to give in. But something inside her rebelled. She couldn't let the injustice against her father go unpunished. "I have a counteroffer," she said, surprising everyone. "Jennifer, don't," Michael whispered. "We want to meet Mark Mitchell in person. Tonight. Alone." The lawyer laughed. "You're in no position to make demands." Oh, we are. Because the documents aren't with us. They're in a safe place with instructions to be released if anything happens to us. It was a lie, but it sounded convincing. The man spoke quietly on his phone for a few minutes, then turned his attention back to them. My client agrees. Tonight at 8, at his office. Come alone and bring everything. After the men left, Rose locked the inn's door, clearly shaken. Are you out of your minds? Those men are dangerous. That's exactly why we have to end this once and for all, said Jennifer. I can't spend the rest of my life running. Michael led her back to the room. Jen, you don't know what you're doing. Oh, Mark Mitchell isn't the negotiating type. Then we'll make sure he has no choice. Jennifer picked up her phone and called Walter. Mr. Walter, I need you to do something for me. You must deliver copies of the documents to 3 different journalists with instructions to publish them tomorrow morning if I don't call by midnight to cancel. Sweetheart, this is very dangerous. It's the only way to ensure Mark Mitchell will listen to us. At 8 that evening, Jennifer and Michael stood in front of an elegant office building in downtown Los Angeles. Mark Mitchell's office took up the entire top floor. The businessman was a well-dressed man in his 50s with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He received them in a luxurious room, offering coffee as if it were a normal business meeting. So you're the ones stirring up the past, he said, studying them like a predator sizing up its prey. We're the ones who want justice for what happened to John Carter, Jennifer replied. Mark laughed. Justice. Your father was a naive idealist who didn't understand how the world works. My father was an honest man who discovered you were stealing. Stealing? Mark stood and walked to the window. My family built an empire. We create jobs, drive the economy, pay taxes. Your father wanted to destroy all that over a few minor irregularities. Murder isn't a minor irregularity, Michael said. Mark turned to them with a cold expression. Be careful with your accusations, young man. You could be sued for defamation. Jennifer took some photographs from her bag and placed them on the table. These are copies of the documents my father gathered. They show illegal transfers, fraudulent contracts, bribes, and there's more. Recordings of conversations where your father admits to ordering my father's death. Mark's face paled slightly, but he kept his composure. Documents can be forged. Recordings can be edited. They can. But the journalist who received copies today will have enough time to verify everything, Jennifer said, bluffing confidently. What journalists? The same ones who will publish everything tomorrow morning if I don't call to cancel by midnight. Mark sat back down, now clearly worried. What do you want? We want you to sign a confession admitting your family's responsibility for my father's death. We want you to create a compensation fund for the families of everyone who suffered because of your company's crimes. And we want you to step away from the business. You're dreaming. I'll never do that. Michael leaned forward. Then you can explain to the press tomorrow how you built your empire on blood and corruption. The silence stretched for long minutes. Mark drummed his fingers on the table, clearly weighing his options. And if I agree, how can I be sure you won't come back asking for more? Because all we want is justice for my father. We don't want money. We don't want revenge. We want the truth to be acknowledged, Jennifer said. Mark picked up the phone and spoke quietly to someone. Then he hung up and looked at them again. I have a counteroffer. I'll pay $10 million for you to make these documents disappear. You can go wherever you want, start a new life. No, Jennifer said immediately. This isn't about money. $20 million. Mark, you're not understanding, Michael said. We don't want your dirty money. The businessman stood abruptly, clearly irritated. Then you're even dumber than I thought. You think you can blackmail me? It's not blackmail. It's justice, Jennifer insisted. Justice? Mark laughed bitterly. You don't know how the world works. You think a few newspaper articles will bring down an empire built over decades? We'll find out, Michael said, standing as well. Mark walked to a safe behind his desk and pulled out a gun. Jennifer felt her blood run cold. I'm sorry, but you know too much, he said, aiming the weapon at them. At that moment, the door opened and several men entered the room. But they weren't Mark's henchmen. They were federal agents. Mr. Mark Mitchell, you're under arrest for racketeering, money laundering, corruption, and homicide, the detective said. Mark lowered the gun, clearly stunned. How did you... Jennifer smiled for the first time in days. We lied about the journalists, but we didn't lie about handing over copies of the documents. We just gave them to the FBI, not the press. The businessman was handcuffed and led away, protesting his innocence. The detective approached Jennifer and Michael. You were very brave, but also very reckless. You could have died. It was worth it, Jennifer said. Finally, my father will get justice. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us newcomers. Now continuing. 3 months later, Jennifer was in the kitchen of her grandmother Margaret's house, which she'd decided to renovate and turn into her new home with Michael. The old wooden table now hosted frequent visits from Mrs. Dorothy, who had become like a second grandmother to her. I still can't believe everything that happened, Mrs. Dorothy said, serving afternoon coffee. Who would have thought that shy little boy who used to play here would turn into a hero? Michael, who was fixing a leaky faucet, chuckled awkwardly. Not a hero, Mrs. Dorothy. Just a husband who wanted to protect his wife. And nearly died trying to do it alone, Jennifer said, giving him a playful pinch. Next time, count me in from the start. There won't be a next time, no more secrets between us. Jennifer glanced at the wall where she'd hung a photo of her father beside one of her grandmother Margaret. I think they'd be proud of us. I'm sure they would, Mrs. Dorothy said. Margaret always said you and Robert were made for each other. She just never imagined it had happened so dramatically. The case against Mark Mitchell and his associates was moving through the courts. Investigations had uncovered a corruption scheme involving multiple companies and public officials. A compensation fund, created with assets seized from the organization, had already helped dozens of families. You know what amazes me the most, Michael said, drying his hands on a towel. How we managed to find each other after so many years, despite all the secrets and lies in between. It wasn't a coincidence, Mrs. Dorothy said with a mysterious smile. Margaret always said fate has its own way of correcting injustices. Do you believe in fate, Mrs. Dorothy? I believe in love, my dear, and in its power to overcome any obstacle. Jennifer stood and hugged Michael from behind as he finished fixing the faucet. Thank you for fighting for the truth about my father. Thank you for not giving up on me when I ran away like a coward, he replied, turning to kiss her. You two are proof that true love always finds a way, said Mrs. Dorothy, wiping away a tear. That night, after Mrs. Dorothy had left, Jennifer and Michael stayed on the porch of the house, gazing at the stars. The city below seemed quieter, as if it too had found peace after so many years of injustice. There's something I need to tell you, Michael said, breaking the silence. Jennifer looked at him with a playful yet nervous expression. Please tell me it's not another family secret. It's not a secret. It's something good. Then go ahead. Michael took her hand. While you were at the police station giving your final statement, I went to the doctor for some tests. Are you sick? No, silly. I went to see if I could have children, and I can. Jennifer felt her heart race. And why did you do that without telling me? Because I wanted to be sure before I proposed something. Michael stood up and knelt before her, pulling a small box from his pocket. Jennifer Baker Thompson, we're already married legally, but I wanted to know if you'd like to renew our vows in a real ceremony, with all our family and friends there, and then maybe start our own family. Jennifer looked at the simple but beautiful ring inside the box. Michael Thompson, you don't have to kneel. I said yes once and I'll say it again, but next time you have a plan, include me from the start. I promise, he said, sliding the ring onto her finger. No more secrets, no more running away, just truth and love from now on. They kissed under the stars, on the porch of the house that had witnessed so many stories of love, secrets, and reconciliation. There, where it all began with an orphaned boy playing with a tiny girl, love had overcome every obstacle. 6 months later, Grandma Margaret's house was decorated with white and yellow flowers for the vow renewal. Mrs. Dorothy had insisted on baking the cake, following Margaret's traditional cornmeal recipe. Walter was there in a rented suit, proud to have helped uncover the truth. Several of Michael's co-workers attended, as well as Jennifer's friends from the accounting firm where she worked. The federal agent who handled the case also showed up, now considered a family friend. "Who would have thought a note left at the airport would lead to all this?" joked the priest officiating the ceremony. "It's true," Jennifer laughed. "I thought I was being abandoned, but I was being led back home." Michael held her hands as they exchanged their renewed vows. "I promise to love you as I always have, ever since we were kids playing in this house. I promise to protect you, but never alone again. I promise to share every secret, every fear, and every joy. I promise to forgive your crazy plans to protect me by running away," Jennifer said, drawing laughter from the guests. "I promise to stand by you in every adventure, even the ones involving chases and family revelations. And I promise to love you forever, the child you were, the man you are, and the father you'll be." When they kissed to seal their renewed vows, everyone applauded. Mrs. Dorothy cried with emotion, Walter whistled like in the old days, and even some neighbors who had gathered outside the house celebrated. During the party, Jennifer found a quiet moment to slip away to the attic where it had all begun. The red box was still there, but now it held no painful secrets. Inside were photos from the ceremony, love letters Michael had written to her, and a positive pregnancy test she had taken the week before. She hadn't told him yet. She wanted to choose the perfect moment. "Jen?" Michael's voice came from the stairs. "What are you doing up here?" "Remembering when it all began," she said, putting the test back in the box. "And thinking about what?" "The future. The baby that's coming." Michael stopped halfway up the stairs. "What did you say?" Jennifer showed him the test. "We're going to have a baby, Michael. A real Thompson." He raced up the rest of the stairs and lifted her into his arms, spinning her around the attic. "I can't believe it. When did you find out?" "This morning. I wanted to tell you during the party, but I thought you might faint in front of everyone." "Can I faint now if I want?" "You can. But then you have to take me dancing downstairs. I want everyone to know we're having a baby." They went down hand in hand, and Michael made sure to announce the news to all the guests. The party lasted well into the night, with plenty of jazz, barbecue made by Mrs. Dorothy, and stories about Margaret told by the oldest neighbors. 2 years later, little John Carter Thompson was crawling around the same attic, where his parents had uncovered the truth about their families. The house had been completely renovated, but kept the charm and memories of past generations. "Johnny, come to Mommy," Jennifer called as the baby explored every corner of the house. Michael was working in the backyard, where he'd built a small workshop for repairs and personal projects. He'd quit his job at the shop in Queens and now worked as a freelance mechanic, serving neighbors and friends in the area. "Jen, come see this," he shouted from the yard. She went down with the baby in her arms and found Michael holding a letter that had arrived in the mail. "It's from the federal police. The investigation is officially closed. Mark Mitchell was sentenced to 15 years in prison. And the others involved? All convicted too. The detective wrote here that the case has become a reference in the fight against corporate corruption." Jennifer sighed in relief. "It's really over now." "No, honey. Now it's really just beginning," Michael said, lifting their son into his arms. "Now Johnny gets to grow up in a family with no secrets, no lies, just a whole lot of love." Mrs. Dorothy appeared at the backyard fence as she did every afternoon. "How's my honorary grandson today?" "Destroying the whole house," Jennifer laughed. "I think he inherited his father's and mother's stubbornness. And his great-grandmother Margaret's curiosity," Mrs. Dorothy added. "She would have loved seeing the family together like this." "She is seeing it," Michael said, looking up at the sky. "I'm sure she is." As the sun set over Georgetown, the Thompson family gathered on the porch for their daily ritual of watching the stars appear. Johnny slept in his father's arms, while Jennifer planned the next day's activities. "You know what moves me the most about this whole story?" she said. "What?" "That in the end everything was resolved with truth and talking. No revenge, no violence, just love and the courage to face the past." "And a mysterious note at an airport," Michael teased. "And a grandmother who kept secrets her whole life to protect the people she loved," Mrs. Dorothy added. "And neighbors who became family," Jennifer said, taking the older woman's hand. When Johnny was old enough to understand stories, his parents began telling him about the hero his grandfather John Carter had been, about his great-grandmother Margaret, who kept secrets out of love, and about how true love always finds a way, even when it seems impossible. The house in Georgetown became a gathering place for the extended family that had formed over the years. Mr. Walter came by every Sunday to fix something and tell stories from the shop. The detectives who worked on the case became friends and came to the birthday barbecues. Even some former employees of Mark Mitchell's company, who lost their jobs but gained dignity when the truth came out, found shelter and guidance in the community that formed around the Thompson family. Years passed and Johnny grew up hearing how his family had overcome injustice through love and truth. When he turned 10, he asked to visit the airport where it all began. "I want to see the place where Mommy found the note that changed our lives," he said. Jennifer and Michael took him to LaGuardia Airport on a Sunday, and they walked through the terminal explaining how everything happened. "What if you two hadn't met?" the boy asked. "But we did meet," Jennifer said. "And that's the point of the story. No matter how complicated it seems, love always finds a way. Even when there are secrets and lies in between." "Especially then," Michael said, "because true love isn't afraid of the truth." Johnny looked at the spot where his mother had waited for his father, imagining what it would have been like if that note had never appeared. But he quickly dismissed the thought. In his mind, his parents were meant to be together, and nothing in the world could change that. Back in Georgetown, Mrs. Dorothy had prepared a special barbecue to celebrate Note Day, as the family had come to call the date when it all began. The table was full of people who had become family along the journey. Neighbors, friends, co-workers, all united by the story that connected their lives. "I'd like to make a toast," said Mr. Walter, raising his glass of soda. "To John Carter, who had the courage to fight for what's right. To Margaret, who kept secrets out of love. And to Michael and Jennifer, who proved that true love can overcome any obstacle." "Cheers!" everyone shouted together. And so, the story that began with a woman waiting at the airport turned into a legend of love, courage, and justice that would be told for generations in the Georgetown community. A story that proved sometimes the most important notes in our lives appear when we least expect them, and that the truth, no matter how painful, is always better than the most comfortable lie. The end of the story. Now tell me what you thought of this story, full of twists and true love. Do you think Jennifer and Michael made the right decisions? How would you react if you found a mysterious note that completely changed your life? Share your thoughts in the comments and let us know where you're watching from. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other exciting stories we've prepared for you.